All right, this video is going to go over how to complete the Titan1M as well as just a little bit of a quick intro into Inventor. So when you start Inventor and you go to New, we have 4 types of files. We're going to mostly live in the standard IPT. Occasionally, we'll do a version of that that's in millimeters, but for the most part, we're going to just stay there. We'll get to some of the other ones later. So I'm going to hit Create. And it's going to load into my screen. So on my view, across the top, my tabs, I have a bunch of different menus. Right now, I'm in the 3D model tab, and so these are all 3-dimensional features. Our 2D sketch button is here as well, which is what we're going to use to start. On the left-hand side of my screen, I have my model browser, and so all of my features and things that I do to my part are going to load here as I do them. I have my view cube, which I can click and drag. Right now, you're not really seeing much happening, but this is allowing me to rotate my part later and click on different views, and then just kind of we'll see here how the mouse works. So to start off, I'm going to start off with a 2D sketch, and I'm going to start off in the XY plane. This part here, right, kind of starts as a block of material that looks like this. So I'm going to start off in my 2D plane here in XY. So now I've got my sketch. I have the crosshairs here, kind of the grid that gets created, lets me know I'm in my sketch. And then I have a sketch tab that's popped up here with all of my sketching tools. This part starts off, it's a rectangle. So I'm going to start off by drawing a rectangle. I'm not going to worry about the sizes when I draw the rectangle. I'll put those in as dimensions. What I am going to do when I click my rectangle command is I need to make sure that I'm on this yellow dot. So notice that my mouse, your mouse will kind of snap there on this yellow dot like this. So I'm going to click and drag and put it in. All right. I have a number of constraints that show up. So this is telling me that I've got some parallel constraints. This is a perpendicular constraint. Right, a rectangle has got a 90-degree corner or perpendicular lines. This constraint here tells me that's horizontal. So by drawing this as a rectangle rather than drawing it as a series of lines, all of these constraints are locked in. So I'm going to right click and hit OK. And then I'm going to add my dimensions. So I have my dimension tab up here. And this part is 4 inches wide and 1.9 inches tall. So dimension, I'm going to click on my line to highlight that. And then when I click in place, it's already highlighted. I don't have to hit delete or anything like that. I can just type in there and there's my number. So that now becomes 4 inches. Another way that you can dimension, so I could dimension this height by clicking on this line. You can also dimension by clicking on 2 lines, and then that'll give you the space between them. We'll just do that for this one here. It doesn't really matter. It's just another way to do it. So now I'm at 1.9. So you'll notice that I kind of moved the view. It's not quite there. The scroll wheel up and down zooms in and out. If you push the scroll wheel, it will move your item around on the screen. Okay. So nothing more to do here for this first step. So I'm going to finish my sketch. If I click the little home button in the corner, it kind of zooms this in right in the middle. So now I'm going to give it a volume, right? So right now I just have a 2-dimensional sketch. So my next step is to extrude, right? So now I'm going to extrude this a distance and look back on here, and I have a height of 0.75. So over here, we're going to change that to 0.75, and then we're going to click OK. Right, so here's my block. All right, so going back and inspecting this as well, I notice that it tells me that there is a radius on the corner of 0.01. This 4x doesn't mean we have to multiply. It just means that there are 4 of them. So 4 at radius of 0.01, right? So there's 4 corners, 1, 2, 3, 4. So they all have that. So I'm going to create that radius using the fillet command. So the fillet command rounds over parts of my sketch, Notice as I leave my mouse on the tool, this little flyout comes down and tells me what it could do with a little picture. So any of the things, if you leave your mouse there, at first it'll give you a description, then it'll show you a picture. So I'm going to click my fillet command, and I'm going to select the edges first, just because that's kind of the order, right? So there's 4 edges, and then this is 0.01. So it's just a little, basically in the machining world, that little fillet around the edge is going to just knock those corners off, so that if this was an aluminum block or something, it's not going to be sharp. So we'll click OK. All right. So now we have that in there. Okay. So my next step is now going to be to do all the holes. So I have a number of holes here. I've got some notifications, some notes on here, right? 2x, again, it's not multiplying. It's just telling me that there are 2 with this dimension. Noticing that, coming down from the top, there's another one over here that doesn't have that dimension. So it's letting us know that those are the same distance down. Same thing right here on next to number 16, same distance down as that one. And you'll notice that in the corner, there is a 0 and a 0, and then numbers going to the right, and then numbers going down. So that all of these measurements are from this corner. Right? It's called datum dimensioning. So we're going to kind of go through that. Make it a little easier on myself. I'm going to click and drag this over to the side, and then put my inventor window over there. You want to make it a little bit larger or smaller, you can kind of drag that middle line. All right. So that I can see kind of what's going on here. All right. So I'm going to add a sketch to my front surface. So I'm going to right click and create a new sketch. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just add all the points that the holes are going to be drilled on. So I've got, right, so I'm going to kind of make it sort of look like that, but I'm not going to worry too much about where everything is. And I'm just going to put them on there. So there's my points. And then I'm going to start dimensioning them. You'll notice that right now, all of these points are purple. And if you paid attention to kind of what was happening on the screen before, in my first sketch, when I draw a line at first, it's purple. When I've given it dimensions and I've located it correctly, or I've constrained it or whatever, it's going to turn black. And that's going to let me know that it is fully constrained. So right now, even on Inventor down here at the bottom, it tells me that there are 14 dimensions that are needed. Right. So I'm going to just start with this first one over here. This is 1.5 inches in, or sorry, 0.15 inches in from each side. So like we did before, I'm going to click on the line, click on the point, and I'm going to go up or down. It doesn't really matter, right? And this is 0.15. Then I'm going to do the same thing going the other way. So I'm going to click on the top line, click there. I'm going to go out to the side, 0.15. You'll notice that this has now turned black. Right? This one over here is the same distance down. And I could add that dimension, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, we're going to add some geometric constraints. So this hole on the right-hand side lines up to this hole. So I'm going to, in my constraint menu, I'm going to use my horizontal constraint. And so I'm going to say that this hole and that hole are horizontal to each other. I'm also going to do the same thing with these two and these two. So those holes are horizontal. These holes are horizontal to each other. You didn't see much of a movement because I kind of placed them that way. But basically what will happen is if one moves, the other moves. You can see them kind of move together. Right? With that, I'm also going to add some vertical constraints. Right? These two are vertical to each other. These two are vertical to each other. So I'm going to click my vertical constraint, make that mark and that mark vertical, this one and that one vertical. So that kind of moves them over. So now when I start to dimension, right, I can't move this one up and down. It only moves left and right. So I can then add that. Don't want to do that. So what I just kind of did there was I grabbed the center point. So it's turned green. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to grab I hit escape to get out of the command, came back into it, and now I'm up here. So, all right, 3.85. And that one turns black without that other dimension because it's locked into this one. Right? That's kind of an important thing. Like if this was, we're just making this part, based off of a drawing. But if we were designing this part and this had an actual use for us and we wanted these holes to line up and we made it and like didn't fit right, we needed to adjust this dimension to like 0.17, the other one would move with it, right? So that's kind of where those constraints come in. It's helpful for the design part, and it makes it a little easier on us. All right. So now I'm just going to go through and continue to plug in the rest of the dimensions. So I'm going to work across the top. So I'm going to do all of these. I find it's easier if you kind of just do. You can either do each point by itself as you go through, or if you want, I like to just kind of go through and do all the dimensions in one direction, then all the dimensions in the other direction. So I'm going to click here. So we'll just kind of do this real quick here. And I'm kind of stacking them like this. All right. And again, they're still purple because I'm missing that other dimension. All right, this one down here. It doesn't matter. I grab that center point. It doesn't really matter. All right. So now I've got all those going that way. And if I want to kind of check, right, they'll move up and down, but they will not move left and right because that's where that dimension comes into play. All right. So now we're going to go down to this one here, 0.3. The other one moved with it because I had the horizontal constraint. This one here, 1.216. And then this one here, all the way from the up the top there, 1.75. They've all turned black. I've got so dimensions crossing. I don't really care too much what it looks like as long as I know that they're all there. And that now tells me that it is fully constrained. So I'll hit OK to get out of my command. And then I'm going to finish my sketch. And I'm going to use the hole command. So the hole command here, when I take a look at this, I have a couple pieces of information. So one, it tells me that there is 7.21 diameter chamfers. And then there also tells me that there are 7 10-32 UNF-2B 0.38 minimum depth. So what this is right here, this is the whole call out and the thread notes. So this tells me what it is. So a 10-32 is a type of thread. It's a number 10. It's not a fraction, like a quarter of an inch. It's a number 10. It does have a fraction to it. This is important because what we do when we actually machine this is we have to drill a hole first. That's a size a little smaller than this. Then we go through and we tap that hole, which is to add the threading to it, right? And in wood, we can make our own threads with our screws, but in metal, we can't do that. So we have to create the threads for bolts or screws or whatever to go into. So where this information is found in my hole command is I have a couple, right? So I have types of holes. So here I have just a simple hole that would be all the way through. A clearance hole gives you a little bit more space than the size you give it. Tapped and then taper tapped holes. So I'm going to do a tapped hole. Notice that when I click that, this all down here changes. When I go back, that goes away, right? So I now have threads. So here I have a bunch of different things. We're going to stay in the ANSI, American National Standards Institute, unified unified screw threads. My size, right? So this is where this comes in here. This is going to be a number 10. And then the designation, there are different things. This is the number of threads per inch. So this says 10-32 UNF. So we're going to find our 10-32. The class is 2B. You don't have to really worry about that. And then what direction it's going. It doesn't tell us that it's the other way, right? Most things are right-hand direction. But sometimes if an object is going to be rotating, it might go the other way so that things don't get loosened up. And then I have the option to do all the way down or not. So this tells me that it's 0.38 minimum depth for my thread. So we can add that. We could make it larger. This is more of a inspection than an actual here. So I'm actually going to go a little bit farther because if we need it to be 0.38 minimum, we want to make sure that in the machining process it goes. So I'm just going to make that 0.5. There's no real rhyme or reason to that, but we're just going to do that there. All right. So we have our termination, whether it goes all the way through. If it did not go all the way through to the other side, there would be another note here telling me the depth of the actual hole. And then this chamfer we're going to take care of later. So it highlights all of them. If for some reason yours didn't highlight all of them, we would click positions and then you would click on them. But if you do it all in one step, it kind of knows that's what we're trying to do. So now I'm going to click OK. All right. And so you'll see what looks like a threaded hole that goes through. So our next, all right, so that gives all 7 of those. So now I'm going to add a 0.21 diameter chamfer. All right. So this is a little bit goofy here. I have in my fillet menu, right, I've got hole, I've got all that stuff, and then I've got some smaller ones here, which depending on how zoomed in you are, you may be able to see it. But this, my chamfer is my angled here, that beveled edge. And if I go through and I make this 0.21, that's not going to work. All right, so that's not what I want here. So this is telling me it's a diameter 0.21 chamfer, which is a little bit goofy. So what we're going to do is we'll come back to that kind of as we finish up, because I want to keep the hole centers for my next thing here, which is going to be to do all these. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video just because it's getting long. In the second part of the video, we'll go through and we'll add this chunk here.